We had one call, shortly after we started the UFO Hotline. We had one fellow call and he says, "Hey, it's 10 o'clock at night, and me and my 12 buddies are sitting here and we're going to keep an eye out for it." Okay. An hour later, "Hey, it's me again. I'm down to 11 buddies." Guess what his buddies were? His buddies were little brown bottles. But he had fun with it. For him, it was fun, and we just laughed about it. You can't get serious and stuff like that. He was having fun. We were having fun. No one got hurt. That's the thing. So we did a lot of stuff over the years, and you had heard that we did 2 UFO conferences in St. Paul. I'll tell you, those are a lot of work. It cost a lot of money. Back then, we were lucky because we had corporate sponsors. We had the town was super gracious, and the county was super gracious for helping us fund the speakers, because speakers are expensive. The first one we got was Stanton Friedman. If you know Stanton Friedman, he was one of the first investigators of the Roswell, New Mexico crash. And he wrote a couple of books on it. And he loved St. Paul. He just loved the idea of the UFO landing pad. Like, this was right up his alley when I picked him up at the airport. We talked for a full 2 hours on the way to St. Paul, and he just could not wait to get his feet on that landing pad. So that made me feel pretty good at the time. And then we also had a Dr. Bruce McAfee, who was a physicist who worked with the military on developing photographs, whether he could tell whether they were fake doctors or whatever. And so he was one of our speakers, and he really enjoyed it here as well. Another speaker from Missouri, I don't remember the name of the town, but a young guy that actually had first-hand witnessing the UFO, and it just pulled him right into that world, and he just needed to know more. But the first one was super successful. We had, I believe it was 350 people showed up for that first one. And the media coverage we got for that was fantastic. And we did it for that. And I've never hidden the fact that we did it for the media exposure. And so we did it, and then a couple of years later, we did it again. But we were lucky this time. We had a homegrown expert right here, Mr. Fernand Belzil, who was doing his own presentation on cattle mutilations. He had a book of photographs and stuff that he had developed over the years, getting rid of all the inspections that he had done. And the second one we did was as successful as well, but then the funding dried out. So those are not cheap to put on. You got to pay $100,000 just for the speakers. So we toned it down and used our homegrown resources, but it was still a success nonetheless. And we had speakers like, I don't know if you have heard the name Linda Moulton Howe. Linda Moulton Howe's her expertise is in cattle mutilations as well. She had done tons of investigations in that. She called one time and wanted to be invited to the next one. So, and to me, I felt that was a success, because that means the message is getting out there when real field workers want to come and be part of the event so that they can share what they're finding. And it's really important, I found it anyway. So, you ever heard the story about the little black men? You ever heard that? Little black men, if you ever see a UFO, little black men will come and see you. Or the men in black. Men in black. You think that's real? Tell me a story. A real story. This fellow in Vancouver, he was really into this stuff. And I was telling him one day, just off the cuff, when we were talking face to face, and I said, I swear to God, somebody's monitoring that UFO hotline, because sometimes when you're taking a report, you hear a click every 15 seconds. Usually that's a hint that you're being recorded. So, no, I'll tell you really, maybe I am, I don't know. Just for the heck of it, what do you think? I'll call you in Vancouver, and I'll tell you, oh my God, I just got a report, I can't tell you where the phone is, you got to get on that page and get it here right away. And so that was fixed between him and I. So, the very next morning, we have the RCMP come to the office, and he wanted to talk to Fernand. About what? Well, about your county relations. Why? Well, we heard you're really into this. Why? And it just kept going on and on. And finally, the RCMP said, "Look, listen, we have a special lab in Calgary that can really help you with these investigations and these mutilations." But they wanted Fernand Belzil's binder of pictures. And Fernand says, "Why would I do that? We've reached out to you guys for help in the past, and none of you wanted to help us. So, with all due respect, thanks for the offer, but no, I'm not giving you my pictures. You want to work with us on futures? By all means, come with us. Come with us to the site when we get a cabinet relations report." And that was the end of that story. But it's interesting thinking, why would we do that? You know, after all that time, they wanted to know what was in that, what I thought I heard. I'm sure that's what they wanted, but that's my opinion. So the police, I think, desperately, deeply want to work with us. They really do. They just don't know how. It's not a career move for an RCMP member to say they see the UFO or they investigated the UFO report. It's just not a career move. And that's unfortunate. It's the same for the military. It's not a career move. But over the last 2 years, you've seen that it is more acceptable now. You're seeing the need for the military actually releasing real-world videos for the first time of something they can't identify what it is, but it is strange. So there's starting to be that openness a little bit, I think. I'll tell you a couple of visits that I had at the UFO London office. One was the retired Air Force colonel from the United States. And again, the same thing. Waited. Everybody would leave the office, so it was just him and I and Andy and stuff that he personally had witnessed. He said, "I'm retired, I don't care, they can't take me out of the military now." But some of the stuff that he had witnessed and that can't report, which is unfortunate, but couldn't report, those were real stories. And I can't go deep into them to tell you what they were saying, but it really, really gets at you, because probably the best one I heard of all the stories I heard was a Canadian Armed Forces pilot who was in the office. Again, waiting for everyone to leave. He said, "Oh, keep up the good work. Just keep up the good work. It's so great that you guys are actually interested in finding out these reports and where they're coming from, because you can map this stuff out if you get enough reports, right?" And anyway, we spoke for about a while, and on his way up, he says, keep up the good work, Paul." He says, "I'll tell you this, they're closer than we thought and further than we can go." And I stopped for a minute and I said, "Well, thank you very much." He said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you just told me they are closer than we thought, further than we can go. You just admitted they exist." He said, "Darn," he says, "I shouldn't have said that." But again, over the years, it was to the point, I don't do a whole lot of UFO stuff anymore, not because I'm not interested in it. It's a deep well that can suck you in if you're not careful, okay? Because there's real stuff happening out there. There's some real stuff, and my game, and I've never denied it, is the promotion side of it, to promote St. Paul as the friendliest community in the world and others. And we invite people from all over this world and others to come here and visit. That was always our tagline. We did an interview with the radio station in California, and a lot of the morning shows, they look for these odd little stories to come in. And so the story was all set up before we went on air, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to ask you, ask me what." He says, "Has it ever been used?" answer to that. No? Okay, good. So we're going live. And we're having fun with this story, and all the UFOs and the hotlines and everything, and going on and on. And he says, okay, Paul, I gotta ask you. Has it ever been used? I said, well, I'll tell you what. My shift ends at 4:30, so if it's used after that, I can see it. And I said, well, that's not fair. I couldn't even see it if I wasn't there, right? But we've had so many stories over this. St. Paul kind of dropped the idea of promoting the UFO quite a bit over the years. I know when we did the first UFO conference, we had some folks in town that were not happy. They thought people were out there laughing at us. And in my world, it was completely the opposite. They actually wished they had something like that they could use to promote their community. And we've seen others like UFO, or not UFOs, but the second UFO conference we did, we had a little community from down south called Sightings. So they came with a replica of their spaceship. They came with the Spock ears, and it was the mayor that was handing them out. But it really demonstrated that collaboration, that the two communities could work together. And it's a promotion. That's what it's about. We want people to come out and have a look, whether it's to look at the Viking ship or it's to look at the UFO landing pad. And that was the whole point of the UFO Sightings Hotline. I'm very proud of the work that we have done with it and the recognition that we got for it over the time. And would I do it again? In a heartbeat, but I'm too old. I couldn't do that much work anymore. So I'll leave that to the young folks, Michelle. Just get right in there and do it. So that's pretty much the bulk of my presentation. I wasn't sure how far to get into the reports, but I think we have a few minutes for questions if somebody has questions. Yes? Okay, the question was why aliens would come to Earth and focus on domesticated animals. Oh yes, yeah. It is, yeah. There's everybody's got a theory, on why they're doing it. I've heard, probably the most plausible one I've heard, it was is they were testing alien DNA using the animal parts like the liver, because there's never a carbon on these things. And it's a DNA testing that they're doing. Whether they're testing or we don't know, right? And so are they testing the cattle because we consume them? And there's kind of the daisy chain together? I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, so the question was about abductions and whether abductions plays a part in that. And I, to be honest, I really don't know. And I mentioned earlier, if you get in as an investigator, it's a rabbit hole. It doesn't end. So there's so many branches to that whole, but once you're in, I swear to God, you just live. And you have to be careful. You have to be mindful of what you're facing all the time. Okay? Yes?
You where is these mutilations still going on, or when was the last time
Oh yeah, no, the mutilations are continuing all the time, but they don't have a place to report anymore. So that's part of it, and there's nobody investigating is the other side. Because like I said, you have to drive around all over the country to go and see these things and do your investigations and stuff. It's deep, but the cattle mutilations has not stopped.
Good day, sir.
Yes.
I want to ask, are you familiar with any of these sightings out by Long Lake in Kihimu in the last 15 to 10 years ago? There was large craft, 500 meters in diameter, all kinds of colors. I know of 3 different couples who were watching that thing pull water out of Long Lake at 3 o'clock in the morning. Have you heard any of that?
I have actually, yes. I teach food safety, and I just did a class in Kahibin last year, so I did hear that story, yes. And it's, I'm glad you mentioned it, because when you're face to face with the witnesses, and it's no BS. I mean, you can see it in their faces that they're serious, right? It's not made up. It's not a story in their minds. They actually witnessed something. So thank you for that, because yes, I did. I was aware of that.
Yeah, I collect stories.
Oh, did you? Good.
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. No other questions? Yes.
So MUFON is also a place where people can report sightings, right?
That is correct. MUFON is a reported site, yes.
Did you ever hear stories where they did want to report to MUFON but felt comfortable reporting to you, or was there any that ever part of the conversation?
It was, yes. Well, we've had reports over the years that did in fact report to MUFON, but wasn't important enough for MUFON. MUFON's a huge organization, and they have people in pretty much every state. Not so much Canada, but in all the states they have reps that can go and investigate these things. But they are ready, but they do have a huge library of reports. But in Canada, it's not that common anymore. Maybe they could get. I didn't tell you. Sorry, it's important. I should tell you. The UFO Sightings Hotline started as a 1-800 number, remember? Sorry, my fault. I should have said that earlier. But the UFO Sightings Hotline started as a 1-800 number. Remember Bob Bigelow I was telling you about? 2 weeks after I met with him in Saskatchewan, I got a phone call at home one night, 8:30 at night, and it was Bob Bigelow. And he says, "Paul, I can't get you out of my mind. It's driving me crazy. Why only Alberta? Why not the whole country?" And I said, "Well, they're crying out. Bob, we're just a little chamber of commerce. We're non-profit, and we just can't afford it." He says, "Well, what if I pay for it?" That's what I mean. He said, "Crack that thing wide open right across Canada." But there's a catch. His organization would get first dibs on the reports. So anyone who was to investigate, his organization had to get it first. Oh, you're in for the promotion. So I said, "Well, I can't okay it over the phone." I mean, Bob Bigelow is a multi-billionaire. But a lot of people take advantage of him. So Bob does businesses when he's seen the color of your eyes, that's what he wants to do. Right? And so I said, "Well, Bob, I've got to take that to my board of directors, and if they approve, then why not?" So, okay, he says, I'll have my staff draft up a contract and send it off to him. Yes, sir. So we did. We signed the contract with Bob Bigelow. He paid for the cost of all the reports, the 1-800 numbers, every province. He paid for that, and he got first dibs on the reports. That was interesting because this guy's serious. This guy's serious about investigations. He had Skinwalker Ranch for I think 10 or 15 years, and he sold it. And it's not called Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, but there's another building there that has it. There's some strange stuff that these guys have uncovered over the years. Still don't have the answer yet, but they're getting closer all the time.
What happened with the line?
I don't know. Is the line still functional?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. No, the line's not functional anymore. Yes?
Have you noticed, or has there been any talk about either more or less strange sightings or experiences since the CERN regulator was turned on and then recently off again?
I'm not sure which regulator you're referring to.
So there was was a system that basically was turned on several years ago, and a lot of people in my line, in my community, reported that time felt faster, that the sun felt different, just very strange phenomenon, just felt really different. And then recently in the last couple of months, CERN was shut down, and people felt that everything felt back to the way it was before it was turned on. So I was just wondering, in the last several years, has there been more or less phenomenon happening?
I could not answer that one. I haven't taken UFO reports for a lot of years. Yeah. Yes?
I'm interested to hear your own personal feelings about some of these reports. Was there anything that you encountered that actually scared you, even though you were like second or third hand on the roof?
The answer is yes. And the question was, did anything ever scare me? Yes. The second mutilation, the mutilation I told you about, the ticking sound, that worked on my memory bank for a long, long time. Because as we were in the field, all around the animal, and we made the decision was to call the veterinarian for a necropsy. And I vividly remember hearing a sound like a turbine. And so I started walking towards the barbed wire fence, quite a ways away from the rest of the crew. And as I got closer to the fence line, it got louder. And then when I grabbed the fence, it stopped. And it was really weird. And walked my way back to where the rest of the folks were. And while we were waiting for the veterinarian to come up to the necropsy, we decided to go to the farmhouse, and have tea and coffee. All right. And so that was fun. And you're sitting there, well, how long are you going to wait for the veterinarian? Well, she'll be here at 5 o'clock or whatever, 7 o'clock or whatever the number was. And everybody said, well, I said, geez, that long? I said, I'm with you. It was 6:45. No, it's not. And that's when we realized, when I was on that ranch, that watch didn't work. That noise, and I had another field investigator over the years who told me you were that close to it. If you had come to the fence, that thing would have taken off because it was right there. That was the only one that ever sat in the back of my mind and said how close I got. And when I tell you, investigations is like a rabbit hole. You can really get pulled down really quickly. So I don't want to scare you. If anybody wants to be an investigator, more power to you. But it's not something I would want to do. Yes?
I'm going to stand up and
Sure.
so people can hear me. A few years ago, I interviewed Fernand Belzil for an article for our Canada magazine. And something he told me that listening to you today and the questions that you brought back to mind, number one, he said there were 7 things, and I don't remember all 7, but there are 7 things that were common with the mutilations that he investigated. One is the type of damage, shall we say, inflicted to the animal was totally different than any raptor or any predator would cause to another living body. That was one of the main things. We talked about the strange phenomena which seem to float around or exist around that. But there's 2 other things he said to me is, how come, or I remember the question being, how come it's mainly cattle where the mutilations occur? In his experience at that time, he had only had one fall of a wild animal being mutilated. So that sort of is an interesting question. Somebody wants to do some research on that. There's something to find out. The other thing is the sex of the animal. How come the vast majority, as you know, are cows? Or young cows, and not an old bull standing out there in the field and that type of thing. So some interesting, I don't know if you could add something to, but I remember that from the interview, specifically from his interview. That was, and the last thing he told me was, are aliens responsible? He said, I don't know.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. But it is I'm sorry. It is true though that the majority of the mutilations are cows, and young animal. There's no age separation at all. It's wherever they can lay their hands on. Typically, like I said, there's no tracks around at all. And we had found some, Fernand and I investigated some that they were dropped in the middle of the field, and there was no footprints. It was impossible for someone to just drive in and drop that animal. I mean, I can call that on now, and it was dropped from the sky. There was no doubt about that. Yes.
I noticed a photograph of, I think, crop circles. Did you ever find crop circles or anything in conjunction with the mutilations?
We thought of it in my time. We thought we had done a crop circle with Fern, but it turned out to be something else. But crop circles are real as well. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. He actually kind of got me curious. I know a lot of indigenous cultures in North America talk about Bigfoot and star people.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if they ever experienced or saw what we call any kind of animal mutilation. And we specify that but one kind of, wild animal. Did they ever mention that kind of thing happening on the culture?
Not to my knowledge, no. I have been on First Nations reserves and Métis settlements and done a lot of teaching and stuff out there. And the one story that I will share, it's kind of off topic a little bit, but the one story was this fella had a Sasquatch in Alberta, a Sasquatch in his crosshairs, and he says, Paul, I couldn't pull the trigger. It was too human. And, and you can see the expressions in their faces when you tell these stories face to face like that. You know they're not BSing. I mean, and this was actually not that far from here, where this happened. So, it's. Indigenous people are probably closer to Mother Earth than any of us. They're so close to it, and they worship to this day, and more power to them. Yes.
I just gotta add, we call them star people.
What we call aliens?
Yeah, and
Okay.
our ancestors were so used to their presence, they were just another person.
Okay, that's interesting.
So we call them star people, all over North America.
Nice. Yes.
Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. When you list off the animals that did get mutilated, I didn't hear bison. Is that perhaps like bison weren't one of the animals that were mutilated? Is because of indigenous relation to star people?
To my knowledge, I've never heard of a bison being mutilated. I've never seen a report of one. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Rhea, do you have time?
5 minutes.
Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Have you ever taken any specialty measuring equipment, like existed?
Yes. The one where the watch didn't work, it was close to a year later that it went back, and it would not work the minute we drove onto that branch. It was something, I don't know, I can't explain it, but we did work with investigators who did bring Geiger counters out, and there is radiation on most of the sites. Okay. All right, thanks you guys, I appreciate your